There was broken glass in the carpet, not a lot, just enough to stab the bottom of my foot when I got up for water at 2:41 a.m. I didn't scream, I just stood there in the dark kitchen, staring at the shards of what used to be her favorite wine glass. The one with the chipped rim she refused to throw out. The one she used every Thursday while watching that horrible true crime show. Except, it wasn't Thursday, and she wasn't home. There was a note, though, written on the back of a grocery receipt. Crumpled, smudged with what looked like lipstick or blood. Probably lipstick, probably. Going out, don't wait up. Try not to be too jealous. I wish I could say I was confused or angry or even sad, but I wasn't. I was numb, hollowed out like a gutted jack-o'-lantern left too long on a warm porch. I just stood there in my boxers, bleeding onto the tile, reading her handwriting like it was a foreign language I used to speak. What kind of wife leaves a note like that? I checked the security camera. Yes, I have one. Don't ask. It's disguised as a motion sensor air freshener. She knew it was there. She even laughed about it once. Called me paranoid, but adorable. At 10:14 p.m., she walked out the front door wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. 5-inch heels, no coat, middle of January. Her phone was in her hand, and she was smiling. Smiling, and beside her, a man in a gray hoodie, hood up, face hidden. She didn't even look back. I watched that video 37 times. Tried to zoom in, enhance, squint hard enough to force his face into focus like some low-budget detective. But it didn't work. Nothing worked, so I did something I haven't done in a long time. I opened the old box, the one taped shut and buried behind tax papers in the back of the closet. Inside were two things, a printed photo of her and a man she swore she never spoke to again. A prepaid flip phone, dead battery, no charger, until now. If what I suspect is true, this wasn't a date. It was a deal. And I was never supposed to know. I found the charger buried in a drawer full of old remote controls, expired batteries, and a key I still don't know what opens. The flip phone was dusty, scratched, and when I plugged it in, it vibrated once and lit up with a pale blue glow like it was coming back from the dead. The screen flickered. One message, saved. Just one, no SIM card, no contacts, no timestamp. Just a single nameless thread with 4 words I'd never seen before. It's happening. Be ready. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but my stomach turned, like when you wake up from a dream and you're falling and your body believes it. I sat there for 15 minutes staring at those words, feeling like they were meant for me, even though I knew they weren't. Or maybe they were. Maybe she knew I'd find it. Maybe that's why she left the wine glass broken. Not out of anger, but as a breadcrumb. And here's the part that started to shake me. I checked her closet. Half her clothes were gone. The side of the wardrobe that used to smell like vanilla and citrus, empty. No toothbrush in the bathroom, no earrings on the nightstand. Even her weird purple shampoo, gone. She didn't go out for a date. She left. I opened our shared bank account. That was my next mistake. $4,000 gone. Transferred to an external account I didn't recognize. I called the bank. They couldn't tell me where. Privacy reasons. But they confirmed the transaction was real. They even said she used Voice ID to authorize it. Then something worse hit me. Our storage unit. We had one, you see. A cheap one, barely bigger than a walk-in closet. Mostly filled with boxes of old college books, sentimental junk, her grandma's quilt. I hadn't been there in months. We paid automatically. I drove over at 7:12 a.m., still in the same clothes, eyes bloodshot, foot wrapped in duct tape because I didn't have any bandages. The lock was gone, cleanly removed, like someone used bolt cutters and replaced it with their own. I tried the old key anyway, but it didn't even fit. The number on the door, Unit 212, was still the same. But inside, I couldn't be sure anymore. I stood there staring at the door for 20 minutes, sweating in the cold, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. And then I noticed the security camera above the hallway corner. It blinked red once, active, so I left. But not before something else caught my eye. In the alley behind the storage lot, spray painted in bright orange on the back of a dumpster, were the same 4 words I saw in the phone. It's happening. Be ready. Now you tell me, what the hell kind of date starts like that? This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't even betrayal in the traditional sense. This was a setup. And I was right in the middle of it. I didn't go home after the storage unit. I couldn't. There was a buzzing in my skull that wouldn't shut off, like TV static cranked to full volume inside my head. So I parked behind a gas station 3 blocks from our place, turned off the engine, and just sat there with my hands gripping the wheel until they cramped. The rain started sometime around 8:30, tapping on the windshield like it wanted in. I didn't move. I didn't blink. The heater had stopped working 2 winters ago, and I never fixed it. My breath fogged the glass. I let it. All I could think about was her face as she walked out the door. That smirk. Not cruel, not gloating, just detached, like she knew something I didn't and had already made peace with it. I played the recording again, the message from the phone. "It's happening. Be ready." I'd hoped maybe I was reading too much into it, that I was spiraling, that I was just being dramatic. But now, I wasn't sure I was spiraling enough. I went back home around 9:15 a.m. The apartment was still. Too still. Not quiet like sleep. Quiet like vacancy. Like someone had scooped the soul out of the place and left just drywall and furniture. Her perfume was gone from the air. Even the hum of the fridge felt unfamiliar. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the salt shaker for what felt like hours. Then I opened the drawer. She had a drawer. You know the one. Every wife has it. The drawer full of mystery objects. Pens without caps, receipts from places you've never heard of. Chapstick in colors that don't look like chapstick. I rifled through it, searching for I don't know what. I was desperate for a clue, anything that didn't feel random. And then I found it. A photo. Tucked between 2 expired concert tickets. It wasn't printed like a normal picture. It was developed. Old school. Faded at the edges. It showed a house. 2 stories, wooden shutters, ivy crawling up the side, and standing in front of it, her, Darlene, holding a baby. I swear to you, I've never seen that house before, and we never had a child. I flipped the photo. One word was written on the back in red ink. Rewind. That's when the nausea hit. I ran to the bathroom and barely made it before my stomach emptied itself. Something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. And I was starting to feel like I was the only one who didn't know what kind of game I was in. I tried to call her. I don't know why. As if she'd just pick up and say, "Hey babe, sorry, I'm in the middle of a cult meeting. Can I call you back?" But, of course, the call didn't even ring. Straight to voicemail. I opened our shared cloud drive. It was something we used back in our early years to swap recipes and vacation ideas. I hadn't touched it in over a year. There were only 3 folders left. 2 were empty. The third was titled June. Inside, a single video. No thumbnail. Just static. I clicked it. The screen flickered, then showed grainy footage, handheld, shakily recorded, like it was done with an old camcorder. The image was of a field, empty, windy. Then a voice. "Heron, if you're watching this, it means I didn't finish what I started." Then silence. No context, no explanation. Just static again. And then the video glitched. Hard. And for a split second, a frame appeared that didn't belong. A man, tied to a chair, blindfolded. Blood on the wall behind him. It was only there for a blink, but I saw it. And the worst part? I think I recognized the room. It looked exactly like the basement of my childhood home, which burned down 18 years ago. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat on the couch with a blanket draped around my shoulders like it was armor, replaying that video until my laptop overheated and shut itself off. I didn't need to see it again. I could still picture the exact grain of the basement wall behind that blindfolded man, the flicker of a single overhead bulb swinging slightly, casting a long, slow shadow that moved like it had weight. And I swear to you, I remembered that room. I hadn't seen it in nearly 2 decades, but it came back to me like a suppressed dream uncoiling inside my head. When I was 13, our house burned down on a Tuesday morning. The fire inspector said it started in the basement fuse box, something about faulty wiring. We lost everything. My parents divorced 6 months later. We moved states. The story had an ending. I never went back. But now, that room was on Darlene's video. And that man in the chair. I couldn't identify him, but my brain kept reaching, dragging up flashes of old neighbors, my dad's co-workers, even my high school principal. I wanted to believe it was fake, that it was some deep fake horror nonsense Darlene found online. But there was a timestamp in the bottom right corner of the screen. It read, June 9th, 2007, 2:13 a.m. That was the night our house burned. Not the day after, not the week before. The exact night, which means the video wasn't a recording of now. It was a recording from then. That's when I started to lose it. Not in the screaming, sobbing, collapsing way. I mean, I started to detach. Like I was no longer tethered to the version of reality I had quietly agreed to all my life. Things didn't feel solid anymore. I picked up objects just to feel weight. I flicked lights on and off. I knocked on the walls. Then I checked the garbage. It wasn't until then that I noticed something even stranger. A receipt for a motel I didn't know existed. Cash payment, dated 2 nights ago. The clerk's signature on the bottom was a scrawl I couldn't read, but I recognized the location from the address. It was out past the highway, near the industrial part of town. Nothing around it but shuttered factories and a dirt lot that used to be a drive-in. I got in the car and drove there, heart pounding the entire way. I didn't even change clothes. I hadn't showered in 2 days. I don't know what I expected. A confrontation? A confession? Maybe just a clue that would make any of this make sense. But what I found was worse. The motel was real. Cracked paint, buzzing neon vacancy sign, a lobby that smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. I asked the front desk guy if anyone named Darlene had stayed there. He looked at me like I asked if unicorns checked in. So I showed him the receipt. He scratched his neck and nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, voice flat. "She was here. Came in with a man." I swallowed. What did he look like? He thought. Didn't see much. Hoodie, beard, I think. Looked tired. He asked for extra towels and, oh yeah, he carried a box, like a cardboard one, duct taped shut, heavy. I asked what room. He hesitated, then scribbled on a piece of paper, Room 12. I walked across the cracked parking lot, every step louder than it should have been. Room 12 was the last on the far end. I knocked, no answer. I tried the knob. Locked. Then I noticed the window was open. The curtain was pulled tight, but I could see it flutter slightly. I walked around back, climbed onto an old AC unit, and peeked through the side of the window where the curtain had slipped. There was no one inside, but there was something on the bed. A photograph. Just one. Centered. Like it had been placed there deliberately. It showed me, as a child, standing in the exact same basement room I saw in the video. Only this time, I was smiling. And written in black marker across the top of the photo was a single word, scrawled in jagged, uneven letters. Forgot. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about her. This was about me, and there were pieces of my life that someone, maybe even Darlene, had taken the time to hide from me. Now, someone wanted me to remember. The drive home from the motel felt like crawling out of my own skin. I kept looking at the photo on the passenger seat, as if staring at it long enough would change it somehow, like it might blink or burn or vanish and take this nightmare with it. But it didn't. It just sat there like a mirror to a version of me I didn't remember being. That smile, my smile, in that burnt-down basement, it wasn't right. It was too wide, too stiff, like someone had told me to smile, and I obeyed without knowing why. And that word written across the top, forgot, it didn't feel like a question. It felt like a command, like an accusation. I should have called someone, a therapist, a friend, anyone. But I didn't. I didn't want someone telling me I was spiraling, or that this was trauma resurfacing. No one could convince me this was all in my head. Not when the messages were real, the videos were real, and my wife had disappeared into the dark with a man carrying a taped-up box. Instead, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old 8mm projector from the closet. It had belonged to my dad, who used to film everything back when people still thought memories needed reels instead of clouds. I hadn't touched it since before the fire, but I still had a few tapes. Mostly unmarked, dusty reels I assumed were birthday parties or school plays. I needed something to feel real again, something solid, something untouched. I loaded the first reel. The whir of the machine was comforting at first, almost nostalgic. The image flickered onto the wall. A picnic maybe? A blurry lawn, people walking in and out of frame. But then it shifted. The footage became unstable. The screen dipped into static before revealing something that made my blood run cold. It was her. Darlene. At least, I thought it was her. She was younger, maybe early 20s. She wore a white sundress and stood in a room I didn't recognize. Brick walls, no windows. She looked straight into the camera. And then she whispered something. I couldn't hear it clearly. I leaned in. The projector motor groaned. The words finally broke through the static. Stop pretending. Then the film cut out. No end. Just black. I checked the label on the reel. It had a single number scratched into it, 9. I scrambled to the box and dug through the others. There were 10 in total. Most had no labels. I picked another, loaded it, hands shaking. This one showed me. Older, maybe a few years ago. Sitting in a chair, head down, arms limp at my sides. I didn't remember this moment. I didn't even recognize the clothes I was wearing, but there was no mistaking it. It was me. Then a voice, not mine, not Darlene's, spoke from behind the camera. You agreed to forget. You signed the terms. You smiled for the photo. Then the screen went white. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the projector. My heart was hammering. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a hallucination. There was documentation of something, some version of myself, of my wife, of our life, that I had no memory of. And worse, someone had been filming it all, curating it, editing it. I went back to the cloud drive, wondering if I missed anything. And there it was. A new folder had appeared. I hadn't touched anything, hadn't refreshed. It just showed up, titled Emory Final. Inside was a single document. I clicked. It was a transcript, a word-for-word breakdown of everything I had said aloud since the night Darlene left. Conversations, mutters, thoughts I'd spoken to myself while pacing the kitchen. Even the voicemail I left that never sent. All typed out in plain text with time stamps. And at the bottom, one last line, unspoken, bolded in red. Subject nearing recall threshold. Prepare phase 2. That's when I heard it, a knock at the door, 3 short, sharp raps. And I swear to you, I hadn't told anyone I was home. The knock didn't come again. Just 3 strikes, too exact, too measured to be random, and then nothing. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, hands twitching at my sides. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared at the door, waiting for the universe to crack open. I told myself not to answer it. I even whispered it out loud. Don't open the door. But my body moved on its own, like the decision had already been made days ago and I was just catching up. I inched toward the door, slow enough to hear every floorboard creak. I didn't speak. I didn't even make a sound as I turned the lock. The hallway light outside was out. It had been flickering for weeks, and now it was just dead. So I couldn't see anything through the peephole. Just black. A thick, humming kind of black. I opened the door 2 inches. No one was there. At least, no one visible. But there was something on the floor. A single manila envelope, sealed shut, no markings. I stepped into the hallway just long enough to pick it up, then locked the door behind me so fast I nearly jammed the bolt. My hands were slick with sweat. I opened the envelope with a steak knife, my fingers trembling like I'd just escaped an explosion. Inside were 3 things. The first was a photo. Another one. This time, it was me again. Older, maybe by 5 or 10 years, hair longer, heavier around the eyes. I was sitting on a hospital bed smiling. Next to me, holding my hand, was Darlene, but she looked different. Not just physically. There was something in her posture, in the way her hand barely touched mine. Her eyes were staring at the camera, not at me. Her mouth was closed, tight, like she was being forced to pose. The second item was a plastic access card. It was matte black, no logo, with a strip on the back and the name Emory Baxter printed in all caps, though slightly faded. No photo, no company name. Just a date of expiry, June 7th, 2029, and the third, a folded map, not GPS printed, not corporate, hand-drawn, messy, in pencil. It showed a part of town that didn't technically exist anymore, an old industrial zone that had been cleared out 5 years ago for some luxury development that never materialized. Warehouses, empty parking lots. One building was circled in red. There was a note scribbled underneath the circle. The footage is still there. You signed for it. Phase 2 equals truth. I read those lines over and over until the words lost their shape. That's when I heard something else. This low, whirring noise coming from the back of the apartment, near the bedroom. Like tape spinning. But I didn't own any cassettes. I followed the sound slowly, every muscle in my body screaming not to. I stopped just outside the bedroom and nudged the door open with my foot. My old tape recorder, the one I used to record music demos in college, was sitting on the dresser. I hadn't touched it in years. It wasn't even plugged in. But the reels were turning and the red rec light was on. The tape clicked, and then my voice came out of it. Not just similar, exact. Same tone, same inflection. But I had no memory of recording it. If you're hearing this, it means you've reached the end of the narrative loop. They'll tell you it's memory loss. They'll tell you it's trauma. But it's protocol. You agreed to the wipe. There was static. Then more of my voice, but lower, almost whispering. Go to the warehouse, bring the card, and for God's sake, don't trust her until you remember what she really did. I hit stop. The silence that followed was crushing. I dropped the recorder, and it clattered to the floor. My mouth was dry, heart thudding like a warning drum. I had no idea what this was. A prank? A deep-rooted psychosis finally surfacing? Some kind of buried government program I'd stumbled into? But I knew one thing now, beyond any doubt. Darlene wasn't just missing. She was involved. And if I wanted to get her back, if I still wanted to, I'd have to go to the building circled in red. The one they forgot to tear down. The one that still held whatever footage they said I signed for. I packed a flashlight, the access card, and a copy of the photo in my coat pocket. I didn't bring my phone. I had a feeling it wouldn't work where I was going. And as I stood in the doorway, ready to leave, I looked up at the living room ceiling and finally noticed the tiny black lens blinking red in the corner. I wasn't alone. Hadn't been for a long time. I drove without headlights. The map crumpled on the passenger seat, the access card burning a hole in my jacket pocket like it had weight, like it wanted to be used. I didn't use GPS. There was no point. The roads I was on hadn't existed on any official city grid in nearly 10 years. I knew because I checked. The development project that was supposed to level this part of town never happened. They said it was due to asbestos, legal holdups, unstable foundations. But now I wondered if it was something else, something they couldn't demolish. The roads narrowed, pavement cracked and gave way to gravel, then dust. The industrial zone was a graveyard of half-eaten metal skeletons, warehouses with rusted roofs, storage silos like hollow towers, and long shadows that reached across the broken earth like fingers. The sky was the color of dirty snow. The air tasted like mold and memory. I stopped the car in front of the building that had been circled on the map. It was squat, concrete, utterly unremarkable. No sign, no windows, just a heavy steel door with a keypad and a magnetic swipe lock. The only color came from a smear of faded red paint across the front. It looked like a warning that had been scrubbed out. I stepped out into the cold, my breath visible in the air despite it being August. The silence was complete, not just quiet but absent. No birds, no wind. Even the gravel beneath my boots made no sound. The access card trembled in my hand. I pressed it to the reader. A green light flickered once. Click. The door unlatched. Inside was darkness. Not pitch black. The kind of industrial lowlight that somehow feels deeper than night. Dim fluorescent strips ran along the ceiling, only a few working. I walked forward into the main chamber. It was massive. Rows and rows of rusted filing cabinets, old metal desks, broken equipment piled high like forgotten bones. I could hear my own footsteps, but even they sounded distant, like they were being absorbed. And then I saw it. A chair, set up in the center of the space, under a single working light. In front of it, a small monitor, CRT, analog, a relic. Wires ran from it into the ground, bundled and snaking. Beside it was a reel-to-reel machine already running. No one was in the chair, but it was turned slightly, facing me, not the screen, like it had been expecting me. I sat down. The screen flickered. At first, nothing but static. Then, a face. Mine, but older. More tired. Gaunt in ways I didn't recognize. I, looked straight into the lens and began to speak. If you're watching this, Emery, you broke the loop. My blood went cold. I leaned forward. There's no elegant way to explain this. You signed a memory redaction contract 7 years ago. You were given the chance to forget. Voluntarily. You were told Darlene had died. But she didn't. She entered with you. Same terms. Same price. We wiped both of you, gave you new patterns, a new setting, but the bleed-through started again, just like it always does. He looked off screen, breathing heavier. You need to understand something. She remembered first. That's why she left. She's not betraying you. She's trying to reach you. The date, the messages, the tape recorder, they were hers. This isn't about infidelity. This is about recovery, about memory integrity, about a project we both agreed to help bury. The screen crackled. Check the drawers. Behind you. Bottom cabinet. Left side. I stood slowly, turned, and opened the drawer he referenced. Inside, a folder marked Test Group 4, B, Baxter, Emery, plus Darlene. Dozens of pages, scanned signatures, psychological reports, repetition conditioning schedules, symbols I didn't recognize but felt like I'd seen before. Some of the pages were watermarked with a name. Orpheus Initiative, Phase 2. I flipped to a photograph stapled at the back. It showed me and Darlene standing in front of the very same building I was in now, smiling, arm in arm, holding a clipboard. Behind us, a large metal door being welded shut. And beyond that, figures, standing in the dark, watching us. The screen behind me popped, loud enough to make me jump. And then a voice came through, deeper now, garbled, twisted. Recall complete. Retrieval in progress. The lights above me began to hum. Footsteps echoed in the far corridor. And I realized it wasn't a memory wipe. It was containment. The footsteps grew louder, steady and deliberate, like whoever was walking knew they had no reason to rush. I stood frozen, one hand gripping the folder, the other clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palm. But strangely, I didn't feel fear anymore, just clarity. Like something that had been tangled inside me for years had finally gone still. The static on the monitor began to clear, slowly replaced by a single symbol pulsing faintly in amber, a circle intersected by a line, like an eclipse breaking open. Then a voice, not the cold one from before, but familiar, steady, even kind, filled the room. If you're hearing this, you made it to the end, you remembered, and most importantly, you chose not to run. I knew that voice. I didn't know how, but I did. It was mine. Not present me, not the broken, scattered version of myself who staggered through the last week like a ghost, but the real me, the version of Emery before the wipe, whole, grounded, and full of a peace I couldn't yet understand. You and Darlene came to us voluntarily. You weren't prisoners. You were pioneers. The Orpheus Initiative wasn't about mind control. It wasn't about surveillance or containment. It was about letting go. People came to us when they needed to start over, when the weight of the past threatened to pull them under. You gave us your pain, your memories, and we gave you peace, but only for a while. Because healing, real healing, doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering and surviving anyway. The door at the far end of the warehouse creaked open. Darlene walked in. No shadow games, no slow-motion theatrics. She just stepped into the light like she'd been waiting for me to catch up. Her face was tired, but calm, eyes softer than I remembered. She was holding something in her hand, a small key. I didn't speak, I couldn't. My throat was locked. She walked right up to me and held out the key. "It's for the exit," she said, "but only if you want to leave together." I blinked. "Why now?" Her smile was real, small, a little sad, but real. "Because you finally chose to look. All of it. You didn't run, Emery. That was the test. You stayed." I looked around the warehouse one last time. It no longer felt ominous, just old, like the inside of a shed from your childhood. Once mysterious, now just dust and nails and wood. I thought about the reel-to-reel, the photos, the voices. They were clues, not threats, a trail I left for myself, and she had helped build it. Darlene wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to wake me up. I took the key. We walked out together. Outside, dawn had started to bleed across the sky. The industrial zone looked different now, less like a ruin, more like a forgotten page waiting to be rewritten. The silence lifted, and I heard birds, the first natural sound I'd heard in days. We didn't talk much as we walked back to the car. We didn't need to. She rested her head on my shoulder. I drove without checking the mirror. Some doors aren't meant to be looked back through. Later, we found a cabin by the lake. Quiet. No cameras, no static. Just clean air and space to rebuild. Some mornings, I wake up in a panic, wondering if it's all a simulation, if another message is waiting in the kitchen drawer. But it never is. And even if it was, I wouldn't open it. Because sometimes the best way to reclaim your life is to remember everything and still choose peace.